Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is part two of the school defense series. Um, a lot of work and effort going into this. So, just as reminders, in case you haven't seen part one yet, and this is the first video that you're catching, this series is geared in order to explore uh, what considerations would have to be brought into effect in order to help improve school safety. This is not 100% comprehensive, but it is an effort to be so. There's always new information coming out as time goes on. So, at the time I'm filming this, this is October 2022, and I'm going to run you folks through. Basically, this entire series is going to be based on what can we do to make schools safer, and also to take a look at what possibilities there are based on what's been, stated on both sides of the aisle. And later in the series, we'll be looking at what would it have to look like if we did follow recommendations to arm teachers or have, willing armed security in schools. Beyond the existing school resource officers, or as you'll hear me refer to them, SROs. Now, this is not me saying that I agree with any specific policy or disagree with any specific policy. What I'm doing here is laying down the facts and trying my best to give some analysis and insight for those of you who don't work in schools and for those of you who do work in schools. That way, you can make your own decisions and come up with your own informed opinions. So I'm going to do my best to keep my own opinions out of it, but I will highlight some things based on my personal experience in the classroom over the past nearly decade of teaching. So let's begin. So this first sheet here, I've taken these directly. These were sent to all of the teachers in my school district a couple years ago, and these are posted in all of our classrooms. So this first one here is teacher guidance. We got this directly from our school resource officer, and it outlines, what should you do, how should you teach it. So when I'm looking at this after a lockdown drill, okay, this talks about Deer Creek Middle School. Okay, a veteran teacher tackled a gunman, and that sort of stimulated the discussion that led to this. This is the SRP Operational Guidance for Schools, Districts, Departments, and Agencies. I don't have the original copy. I only have what was sent to me by my school SRO. So what they're saying here is when we talk to kids about SRPs, okay, which is school response plans, basically, depending what grade level is being taught, changes how a teacher and a district should expect students to react and comply. As it says here, elementary students are much more willing to do what they're told because, they aren't quite at that point in their life where they feel the need to rebel against their teachers. Whereas on the other side of things, high school students and especially junior high students, grades 7 and 8, in American schools, grades 7 and 8 are when students are at their most rebellious, in my opinion. I go over this stuff maybe once a month with my students just to refresh them because they, for whatever reason, don't remember. So 7th and 8th grade tend to be the ones that will resist this stuff the most. And what I've had to do in order to make sure that I get that compliance I'm looking for is I tell the students straight up, I have lived through a lot. I am here to protect them, and their well-being is my prime concern. However, I treat drills very seriously. Okay, fire drills, lockdown drills, lockouts, all those sorts of things, hold in place. I treat them very seriously, and my students know If they're screwing around during one of these drills, I'm not giving them a second warning. If they're being defiant, if they're on their cell phones, if they're talking, first we'll have a talk after the drill is over. Okay, that's on top of the redirection, telling them to stop during the drill. We will have a talk, and the next time, if that happens, they get a referral and they have to talk to my principal or assistant principal or whoever your disciplinarian is in your school district. It's very serious. One of the things that I've always looked at is all of these apps on these kids' phones. They don't know anything about digital privacy, digital security. They just know this app is fun. I'm going to use it. They don't know that they have tracking on their phones. They have no idea that there's a Snap Map and an Instagram location tag, a Facebook check-in tag, all these sorts of things where, say, if there was an active shooter in a school, these kids don't know that, hey, if you don't know who the active shooter is and your tracking services are on and your phone is active, they will know where you are. Okay? That's why you don't use your phone. Okay? I get that they want to contact their parents and this and that, but I tell them the worst thing you can do is have your phone out and on and being used during one of these incidents. It's just one of those deals. Same thing where, my students say to me, oh, if there's an active shooter, we're just going to run. And then I give them the explanation with that as well. There were places like Columbine where the idea was to flush everyone out of a classroom, and then once they're outside, the second gunman takes in, starts popping off shots. I explain that to them. So the big thing is to give the reasoning to the students of why this stuff is important and what the different contingencies are. That way they understand them. Now, what I worry about sometimes, and what I also, thought a lot about before I started making this series, is how much information do I actually want to divulge and put out there on the internet? Because you never know where a threat's going to come from. So I'm going to be putting out enough information here to give you a picture of how it looks, but I'm not going to give my in-classroom specifics, especially because of the fact that you never know, and I don't want to give people ideas of how to skirt around things. So I'm going to do enough analysis to make sure that we can have a educated discussion on this, but I'm going to withhold some details and some contingencies in order to maintain the safety and the integrity of what's already being done. So before the drill, all teachers talk with their students. This is the thing we do in New York State. We do drills. I think it's 8 per year for lockdowns. Fire drills, I believe, is 1 or 2 per month. I think it's just 1 per month. Usually we get them all done, pretty early on before the weather shifts. So the reason behind the drills is to have the kids know exactly what's going to happen. It teaches them where the safe zones are. Okay, what do you do if you're not able to get into a classroom during a lockdown? It just so that the kids know exactly what's going on, and so that the teachers know what's going on, and so that we can assess how well we're doing these things and what we need to improve. So things as a teacher that you look at: where are you sitting the kids? Okay, where am I going to station myself so that if someone does make it into the room, I can respond before a kid gets hurt? Okay. One of the things they have in here says play baseball during a free period with the kids, so that way you have an excuse to have a bat in your classroom. I'm lucky in the fact that I am in a workshop classroom, so I have things that are much better than a baseball bat in there, and I have enough of them that I could, in theory, give every student something to defend themselves with. That's not the norm, but it's something that I have the luxury of. So it says after the drill, okay, scenario-based thinking with the students. That's pretty much what I was just talking about earlier, thinking of all the contingencies. It's sometimes good to do that with the students, but don't take too much time out of it, because then those questions all start to, disappear and get off track. We talk about what happens if you're in the hall. Every teacher, when there's a lockdown, the first thing they do is they go to their doors and they do a quick head check outside the door to make sure there's no one that they need to pull in for safety, and then they shut the door. The teacher closest to the bathroom tends to, also be the one that checks the bathroom quickly. What we tell students is, if no one catches them and they're not able to get into a classroom, maybe they're in the bathroom, there are things that you can do to make yourself less noticeable. The first thing is, in our school, all of our bathroom doors, the exterior doors lock automatically. They're propped open. I do the same thing with my classroom door. All you have to do is just remove whatever door check or whatever's holding it open, and then the door locks automatically. That's a good first step. That's not possible in every school district. So other things that can be done is trying to hide yourself in a stall. Okay. The biggest question I always get from students is, well, our toilets are automatic flush. How do we stop that from happening? Drape a piece of toilet paper over the sensor, they won't flush. Okay, I tell that to the kids. Pick your feet up so no one can see them under the stall, and just keep yourself quiet, and that's about the best you can do in a bathroom. So there's things like that. Okay, in the classroom, the idea is to stay out of sight of the door. Whatever ingress, egress points there are, so those can all be shut, and even if someone peeks in through a window in the door, no one can see who's in there. The general saying is locks lights out of sight, but we'll get into that. If someone comes into the room, makes it into the room, okay, you try and run if you can, but inevitably, I don't think that's a realistic thought. If someone gets in the room, I believe if you're close to them, your only chance is to confront them head on and try and take them down as quick as possible. If you're outside, there's evacuation sites. So that runs us through the first sheet here. I'll quickly go over the second sheet, which is more the diagram that the teachers have posted in their rooms. This is the one that students would see better. So we've got a whole bunch of different responses to emergencies. Right? SRPs are the standard response protocols. So we have shelter. This is mainly weather-based. Okay, hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, tsunamis. Okay, this is kind of like what most of you would remember, where we, drop, cover, and hold. We don't really practice this in public schools in New York anymore. I remember we did them when I was a kid in school. Like the old, the nuclear drills and stuff. Get under your desk. Crouch down, put your head between your legs, and hands over your head and all that kind of stuff. That's something that when it's needed to be done at this point, the need for it has been, so absent that at least in New York, we don't really do drills on that anymore. The second one that we have is what's called a hold in place. So a hold in place is usually used for a non-emergency situation that still requires privacy. So maybe someone got injured and needs to be brought through hallways without people looking for, privacy reasons and all that kind of stuff. Prevent congestion. So let's say, someone has a heart attack and they need to be wheeled out to an ambulance on a gurney through the school hallways. The school will call a hold in place, and that just means that you can go about your normal business in the classroom, but everyone has to stay in the classroom until we get an all clear. Attendance is always taken in an emergency. That way you know which students you have. Then there's an evacuation. So evacuations Those are typically if there's a more sort of national or statewide emergency where we need to send everyone home ASAP. Maybe there's something wrong with the school building that the students can't stay in. Um, could be one of many things. Could be if utilities to the building stop functioning. That's generally when an evacuation would be called. At my first school district, we had a day where all of the water and sewage stopped working. Um, on that day, we had to send everyone home early, and that was an evacuation. Um, so, we had to escort students to the local evacuation site, which is off school grounds generally. And then once all the students are home and accounted for, the teachers head home too. Then we have a lockout, which is if there's a threat detected outside of the school building. Maybe there's some creepy guy out in the woods by the playground or something. That's when we would have a lockout. So it basically means nobody in or out of the building, doors locked, and police are being called. But inside the building, it's business as usual. Then we have our standard lockdowns, which is like I was talking about earlier, locks, lights, out of sight. Okay, don't open the door for anything, even a fire alarm. The only way that you open that door is if a police officer shows up and opens the door with a key. You don't open the door for any reason whatsoever. No matter what happens, you do not open the door. You maintain silence. Okay. You do everything you can to prevent detection, and you wait for the authorities to arrive. So that's our general responses. They tell you to arm yourself with, be it a baseball bat like they mentioned in the other document, golf clubs, all those sorts of things. Being in a shop classroom, I have plenty of lumber and 2x4s and blunt objects and sharp objects, heavy things, all that kind of stuff. I generally post myself in a blind spot near the door. That way, if someone were to come in, I can jump them quickly before they even have a chance to get to the kids. I get to have a little bit of fun with that every year because the janitor that comes in to do part of the inspection during those drills doesn't always necessarily remember that I stand there. So I don't, try and scare him or anything, but he usually comes in the room, he unlocks the door, comes in the room, and then notices where I am and, gives him just a little bit of a jump. So those are the sorts of things I look at. I look at points of egress. That way, if someone starts coming in from, one ingress point, there's an alternate route to get the kids out. My classroom actually has 3 points of ingress and egress. 2 of them are locked all the time. Well, technically, they're all locked all the time, but one door is always open. The other 2 are generally closed and locked because one of them leads outside and one of them leads to a neighboring classroom. But what that does for me is I can tell the kids if someone were to show up at one door and they start breaking through, we have 2 other options to get out of that dangerous classroom and get another wall between us and the intruder. So there's a lot of options there. There's always kids that just don't really take it seriously, and you have to have conversations with them. But that's the general rule. In all school districts, in New York at least, anyone is legally allowed to call a lockdown within the school building. Okay, any teacher, any administrator, any staff member can call a lockdown. In my district in particular, the teacher's actually given a code that we can use in the phone to initiate a lockdown. And then everything goes on from there. And that way you don't have to wait for things to get relayed to certain officials and all that kind of stuff before everything gets announced and locked down. You can just call it right away. There's no delay, and you don't waste any time. So that is the scoop on that. This is a good general representation of what most schools in the U.S. currently have. This is in addition to all other security measures that are on the building, like, keypads and fobs and, ID badges, swipe cards to get in the buildings, reinforced glass doors and all, security doors and all that kind of stuff. Never leaving a door propped open to the outside of the building, all that kind of stuff. All of this comes together, and if it's done right, it's not that bad. And it is relatively secure. It's one of the better ways we can do things. So that's the scoop there. This is part 2. For part 3 of this series, okay, I'm going to look at defensive considerations for in the classroom and in the school. These will be ways that we can defend ourselves in a classroom without firearms or objects and things that are otherwise prohibited in a school building. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you all next time.